The city lights glittered outside Rachel's window, a sprawling tapestry of human connection, vibrant and relentless. Yet, within her small apartment, a different kind of quiet reigned, the heavy, suffocating silence of profound loneliness. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was the absence of a shared breath, a knowing glance, the comforting weight of another human presence. For years, Rachel had navigated this quiet solitude, a silent observer in her own life, but the emptiness had become an unbearable echo in the chambers of her heart. This profound sense of isolation, a common affliction in our increasingly interconnected, yet paradoxically detached modern world, often drives individuals to seek solace in unexpected places, to forge bonds that might otherwise seem unconventional. It's a primal human need, this yearning for connection, a fundamental drive to be seen, understood, and cherished. When conventional avenues for fulfilling this need prove elusive, the human spirit, in its endless ingenuity and desperation, seeks alternatives. And for Rachel, that alternative arrived in the most unlikely form: a soaking, wet, shivering stray dog named Max. It was a dreary, rain-soaked evening, the kind that amplifies feelings of vulnerability and despair, when Rachel first saw him huddled at the corner of her street. She wasn't an animal person, not typically. Her world was largely human-centric, albeit sparsely populated. But something about Max's gaze that night, perhaps a mirror of her own unspoken need, a silent plea for compassion, pierced through her usual detachment. It wasn't just the physical cold that seemed to emanate from his shivering form. It was an existential chill, a shared recognition of being adrift and alone. This moment, seemingly insignificant, marks a crucial turning point, a decision made out of empathy that would soon weave an intricate, inescapable web around her life. In that instant, Rachel didn't just offer a stray dog shelter. She unknowingly invited a profound, transformative, and ultimately perilous shift into her existence. She couldn't leave him there, a testament to the spark of kindness that still flickered within her, a tiny flame against the vast darkness of her solitude. From the moment Max stepped across her threshold, a new chapter began, one where the boundaries between companionship and dependency began to blur with alarming speed. Max became Rachel's shadow, a constant, unwavering presence. His unwavering gaze, his persistent proximity, the soft brush of his fur against her legs, it was a balm to her long, aching loneliness. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Rachel wasn't utterly alone. The quiet of her apartment was now punctuated by the gentle rhythm of Max's breathing, the occasional soft sigh, the comforting thud of his body against hers. This initial phase of their relationship was characterized by a profound sense of relief, a blossoming of a new kind of comfort. It's a common experience for many who adopt pets. They often become more than just animals. They become confidants, silent witnesses to our lives, sources of unconditional affection. This intense bond, born from mutual need and loneliness, initially served as a powerful antidote to Rachel's isolation. She felt a connection, a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. But as with all powerful forces, this bond held the potential for both immense solace and unforeseen danger. The line between healthy attachment and overwhelming codependency is often subtly drawn, and Rachel, perhaps too starved for affection, began to unknowingly step across it. As the days bled into weeks and weeks into months, a subtle yet unsettling shift began to manifest in Max's behavior. His protectiveness, initially endearing, began to morph into something darker, more possessive. He wasn't just a loyal companion, he was a gatekeeper, an arbiter of Rachel's interactions with the outside world. Anyone who dared to approach Rachel, especially any male figures, was met with a barrage of barks, a low, menacing growl, a silent yet potent declaration of ownership. It was as if Max was staking an undeniable claim, erecting an invisible barrier around Rachel, isolating her even further. This aggressive territoriality, while common in some dog breeds, took on a profoundly disturbing dimension within the context of Rachel's burgeoning dependency. It began to mirror, in a chilling way, the controlling dynamics sometimes observed in deeply unhealthy human relationships, where one partner isolates the other from friends and family. Rachel, perhaps blinded by her desperate need for affection and her lack of experience with healthy boundaries, initially dismissed these behaviors as signs of Max's deep devotion. She started to rationalize his actions, believing them to be an expression of love, rather than an alarming symptom of a relationship spiraling into unhealthy territory. It was in this deeply isolated and emotionally vulnerable state that Rachel, in a startling departure from societal norms, found herself falling in love with Max. The narrative in the original story delicately skirts around the explicit, but its implications are undeniably profound and disturbing. Each night they shared kisses that deepened their connection, and they would lie close to one another, finding comfort in each other's arms. This language, while seemingly innocuous, hints at a depth of intimacy that transcends the conventional human-animal bond. The story continues to escalate these implications. Their love grew stronger with each passing day, becoming a bond neither of them could deny. And later, the most explicit references, she couldn't find anyone who could satisfy her or make her feel the same passion she felt with Max. And her heart and body kept pulling her back to Max, so she continued to sleep with him, knowing that nothing and no one could take his place. These lines, collectively, paint a picture of a relationship that had crossed a fundamental ethical and psychological boundary, a relationship that provided Rachel with a profound, albeit profoundly misguided, sense of fulfillment. This development is crucial for understanding the depths of Rachel's isolation and the extreme measures her psyche took to cope. When an individual is emotionally starved, desperately seeking validation and affection, the mind can become incredibly adept at constructing narratives and attachments that, from an external perspective, appear deeply problematic. Rachel wasn't just seeking companionship, she was seeking an all-encompassing love, a connection that would fill the vast emptiness within her. And in Max, she found a being who seemed to offer just that: unconditional presence, unwavering loyalty, and an intense, focused devotion that no human had ever provided. The problem, of course, lies in the inherent power imbalance and the ethical chasm that separates human-to-human relationships from human-to-animal bonds. Dogs, by their nature, are dependent creatures, inherently loyal, and programmed to please their human companions. This makes them tragically susceptible to being drawn into unhealthy dynamics, particularly when the human partner is experiencing profound psychological distress. In a normal human relationship, love involves mutual respect, consent, and a shared understanding of boundaries and societal expectations. None of these elements can truly exist in a relationship between a human and an animal in the same way. What Rachel experienced with Max, while providing her with a potent sense of comfort and satisfaction, was ultimately a deeply codependent and ethically fraught arrangement. It became a substitute for genuine human intimacy, a distorted reflection of the love she craved. And in doing so, it further cemented her isolation from the very human connections she desperately needed. This phenomenon, while extreme in Rachel's case, touches upon broader psychological patterns: the search for perfect love, the escape from the complexities of human interaction, and the dangerous allure of a relationship where one feels absolutely adored and irreplaceable, even if that adoration comes from a being incapable of true, reciprocal, human understanding. Rachel's love for Max, therefore, can be analyzed not as a true romantic connection, but as a symptom of a much deeper psychological wound, an attempt to fill an unfillable void through an increasingly inappropriate and isolating attachment. The consequences of this increasingly unconventional bond were swift and devastating for Rachel's social life. As the months passed, her friends, those who still tried to maintain a connection, began to notice. Max was always there, an unyielding sentinel, his presence casting a long, possessive shadow over Rachel's interactions. Visits to her apartment became an ordeal, punctuated by Max's aggressive barking, making normal conversation an impossibility. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was an active barrier, systematically dismantling Rachel's remaining social ties. Consider the perspective of a friend trying to maintain a normal friendship. They come over, perhaps for a casual chat, a study session, or just to hang out. Instead, they are met with hostility, constant barking, and an unsettling sense of being unwelcomed, even threatened. It's not a welcoming environment. It's a tense, uncomfortable space where the dog, not Rachel, seems to dictate the terms of engagement. This aggressive policing of Rachel's interactions became particularly apparent when she attempted to form a connection with Jake, a boy from her college class. The introduction of a potential romantic interest, even a nascent one, proved to be an intolerable infringement in Max's eyes, and consequently in the dynamics of Rachel's life. The first time Jake came over to study, Max's incessant barking and aggressive demeanor made any genuine academic engagement impossible. Jake, understandably, couldn't concentrate, and soon left, never to return. This incident wasn't just a missed study session. It was a powerful symbol of Max's destructive influence on Rachel's ability to forge normal human relationships. He wasn't merely protecting her, he was actively isolating her, driving away anyone who might challenge his singular position in her life. Rachel, initially, might have found Max's jealousy cute, a twisted validation of her own desirability and Max's fierce devotion. This initial misinterpretation is a classic defense mechanism, a way to normalize and even romanticize behavior that is, in reality, deeply unhealthy. It's a common trap in codependent relationships, where controlling behavior is rebranded as passionate love. But as she began to lose more friends, the initial cuteness dissolved into a chilling realization. She was trapped. Max, once her salvation from loneliness, had become her gilded cage. He was her only companion, and while she undoubtedly loved him in her own complicated way, the cost of that love was her life. Her friends, those vital external perspectives, were driven away, leaving her even more vulnerable and isolated. This erosion of her social network meant Rachel lost her sounding boards, her mirrors, the people who might have offered a lifeline, a different perspective, or even a gentle intervention. She was left alone with Max, deeper in the echo chamber of their singular, unhealthy bond. The burgeoning awareness of her predicament began to gnaw at Rachel. She tried to push Max away, a nascent instinct for self-preservation stirring within her. She dated, hoping to find a human connection that could fill the void Max occupied. But here, the profound impact of her relationship with Max became starkly evident. No matter how many dates she went on, no one made her feel the way Max did. No one could satisfy her or make her feel the same passion. This isn't just a testament to the intensity of her unique bond with Max. It's a tragic reflection of how deeply entrenched she had become in that particular, unconventional dynamic. She had, in a sense, rewired her emotional and possibly physical expectations, making normal human intimacy seem bland or insufficient in comparison. It's a poignant illustration of how an unhealthy attachment can distort one's perception of healthy relationships, creating an almost impossible standard that only the problematic bond can seemingly fulfill. Every attempt to break free, to sever the ties, inevitably led her back to him, night after night. Her heart and body, as the story states, kept pulling her back. This wasn't merely habit. It was a deeply ingrained pattern of dependency, an emotional addiction that proved incredibly difficult to overcome. The cycle of trying to leave, failing, and returning only served to reinforce the idea that Max was irreplaceable. that this unique, isolating connection was her only path to perceived happiness or satisfaction. Despite the social wreckage her relationship with Max had wrought, Rachel still clung to one solitary beacon of hope, her dream of studying abroad. This wasn't just an academic pursuit, it was a fantasy of escape, a vision of a fresh start, a chance to reclaim a life that felt increasingly suffocated. She had worked tirelessly, her dedication finally rewarded with a scholarship to a prestigious overseas university. The exhilaration, the sheer surge of possibility must have been overwhelming. This was her opportunity to break free, not just from the city, but from the invisible chains that bound her to Max. But the thought of leaving Max behind cast a long, dark shadow over her jubilation. Strict pet policies at student housing made bringing him impossible, and the idea of abandoning him felt like an unimaginable betrayal. She was caught in an agonizing dilemma, her future versus her deeply entwined, albeit problematic, present. This conflict represents a classic struggle in human psychology, the clash between personal growth and deeply ingrained attachment, even when that attachment is detrimental. Rachel stood at a precipice, forced to choose between the life she dreamed of and the comfort, however twisted, of her current reality. The internal battle must have been fierce, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Just days before her flight, the choice was violently made for her. She returned home from a quick errand to a scene of domestic devastation. Her passport, the golden ticket to her future, lay shredded on the floor. And in the middle of this ruin sat Max, wagging his tail, an innocent perpetrator, completely oblivious to the magnitude of his actions. This wasn't merely an accident. It was an act of profound sabotage, a chilling manifestation of Max's possessive love. He had, quite literally, destroyed her future to keep her by his side. The shock, the despair, the sudden brutal demolition of her dreams must have been paralyzing for Rachel. Her dream was gone, snatched away not by fate or circumstance, but by the very entity that was supposed to be her comfort. The difficulty of obtaining a new passport in time, the missed opportunity, the irreversible nature of the loss, it all converged into a crushing realization. This incident serves as a stark metaphor for how deeply unhealthy attachments can consume and destroy an individual's potential, their aspirations, and their very sense of self. It wasn't just a passport, it was her independence, her agency, her chance at a different life, torn to pieces. In the aftermath, a tempest of emotions raged within Rachel. Anger, betrayal, but also a strange, persistent undercurrent of understanding, even forgiveness. Maybe he had sensed her leaving and acted out of fear of being left behind. This rationalization, while perhaps born of a desperate need to find meaning in the destruction, also highlights the insidious nature of her codependency. She couldn't bring herself to fully blame Max because a part of her identified with his fear of abandonment. Her friends and family, those distant voices of reason, saw the situation more clearly. "You're too attached," they told her, even without knowing the full, disturbing extent of her bond. Her parents, unaware of the intimate details, urged her to prioritize her own well-being. This external pressure, combined with the catastrophic loss of her dream, finally forced Rachel to confront the undeniable truth. Maybe it was time to let Max go. That night, alone in her bed, Rachel wrestled with the agonizing decision. Max's possessiveness had escalated, his constant need for proximity and control becoming an unbearable weight. It was no longer comforting. It was suffocating. She yearned for freedom, for a life unburdened by his constant presence. But the thought of letting him go immediately triggered a cascade of conflicting emotions. She remembered the unique connection, the way he knew exactly how to make her happy, how to satisfy her in a way no one else could. This internal dialogue, this profound struggle, illuminates the insidious grip of an unhealthy attachment. The The rational mind recognizes the destructiveness, the need for change, but the emotional core, the part that has experienced a unique, albeit problematic form of fulfillment, resists with all its might. Rachel feared that if she let Max go, she would never find that specific kind of pleasure or closeness again. This fear, while deeply misguided, is profoundly human. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear that something unique, even if damaging, is irreplaceable. It's a common stumbling block for individuals trying to escape toxic relationships, whether human or otherwise. The perceived intensity of the problematic bond often overshadows the potential for healthy, fulfilling connections. Her friends had already abandoned her, tired of Max's aggression. Rachel, in her deepening isolation, tried to convince herself that it didn't matter. As long as she had Max, she didn't need anyone else. This statement is not just a denial, it's a testament to the profound psychological shift she had undergone, a complete reorientation of her needs and desires around Max. She had become so thoroughly isolated that her entire world, her entire sense of self, revolved around this one increasingly problematic relationship. The whispers and observations of others eventually breached Rachel's self-imposed isolation. One day at school, her friend pulled her aside, a serious, concerned expression etched on her face. This conversation, delivered not in Rachel's isolating apartment, but in the semi-public space of school, was a desperate attempt by a friend to reach Rachel. The friend articulated what many must have been thinking, the reason for her own withdrawal: Max's aggressive behavior. "He barks like crazy and chases me honestly. I'm scared of him." Rachel, still clinging to her distorted perception, dismissed it as mere protectiveness. But her friend's words cut deeper, revealing the chilling reality of public perception. "It's more than that. It's not normal, Rachel. People have even started talking about it. They're saying strange things about how close you are to Max. Some are gossiping that it's not just a pet and owner relationship anymore. They think it's awkward." This moment of stark revelation, this public unveiling of her private shame, must have hit Rachel with the force of a tidal wave. She had believed her secret world was contained, unseen. The wave of embarrassment, the realization that her deepest, most unconventional attachment was now a subject of public gossip, was a painful awakening. Her friend's final plea, "You know I care about you, but this isn't right. You need to do something before things get worse," echoed the growing alarm of those around her. Rachel sat in silence, her mind reeling. The protective cocoon she had built, the justifications she had woven, were beginning to unravel under the harsh light of external judgment. The perception of others, the collective unease of her community, finally forced Rachel to see her relationship with Max not as a private solace, but as a public problem, a source of scandal that was now irrevocably tarnishing her reputation and threatening her future. The truth, however painful, was that her bond with Max was causing more problems than she realized. The weight of this realization pressed heavily upon Rachel. One evening, as she watched Max curl up at her feet, the familiar comfort was now tainted by a growing sense of unease. She loved him, yes, but she could no longer ignore the undeniable truth. Something had to change. This wasn't sustainable. This wasn't a life. The profound shift in her perspective, from self-justification to reluctant acceptance of the need for change, marks a significant, albeit agonizing step towards potential healing. It's a moment of profound internal struggle, where the allure of comfort clashes violently with the imperative of self-preservation and social reintegration. With a heavy heart, Rachel made the agonizing decision. She packed a small bag with Max's things and arranged for a friend to take him in for a while. This was, arguably, one of the hardest decisions of her life, a wrenching separation from the creature who had been her sole companion and source of comfort, however problematic, for so long. Max's confused, sad eyes as she led him to the door must have been unbearable. For a moment, the old pull, the ingrained dependency, threatened to derail her resolve. But she held firm. This act, however difficult, was a courageous step towards reclaiming her agency, a desperate attempt to break free from the suffocating embrace of her unhealthy attachment. That night, Rachel lay in bed alone for the first time in years. The silence was deafening, the apartment eerily empty. The absence of Max, once a burden, now felt like a gaping wound. She tossed and turned, overwhelmed by a wave of unexpected grief and profound emptiness. The room felt cold, lifeless, devoid of the presence she had come to rely on so completely. Tears welled in her eyes, a testament to the depth of her dependence not just for companionship, but for a unique, all-consuming form of comfort. She had thought she was doing the right thing, a rational choice for a rational future. But in the immediate aftermath, the emotional cost felt almost unbearable. The decision, though logically sound, had ripped a hole in her existence. Unable to sleep, driven by an almost primal need to fill the sudden void, Rachel got dressed and ventured out into the silent city, drawn back to the familiar, comforting presence of Max. She found him at her friend's place, his tail wagging excitedly at her sight. The wave of relief that washed over her was powerful, instantaneous, and deeply troubling. This quick return underscores the insidious nature of her addiction to Max, demonstrating how deeply ingrained the patterns of reliance had become, and how challenging it would be to truly sever the unhealthy bond. Despite the relapse, a seed of change had been planted. Rachel, perhaps subconsciously, began to understand that her approach to relationships needed a fundamental shift. She had always been guarded, wary of letting people into her life, and Max had amplified this tendency. But then she met Daniel. He was kind, funny, and genuinely interested in her. Something felt different. A glimmer of hope that a normal, healthy human connection was still possible for her. Slowly, tentatively, they began to spend more time together. Rachel, in a remarkable show of resilience and a budding desire for normalcy, started to believe that she could, perhaps, balance her life with Max and a new human relationship. This was a crucial test, a negotiation between her past, deeply ingrained patterns, and her burgeoning hope for a different future. It wasn't long before Daniel, caught up in the natural progression of their relationship, invited Rachel to spend a month-long holiday at his house. The invitation was casual, warm, and inviting. We can relax, watch movies, maybe even cook together. For Rachel, it sounded like a dream, a taste of the normalcy she craved. But the dream came with a fundamental caveat, a non-negotiable condition rooted in her lingering attachment. "Can I bring Max?" Daniel's initial reaction was laughter, assuming she was joking. His subsequent silence and hesitation revealed his discomfort, his fundamental disconnect from the intensity of her bond with Max. He wasn't a dog person, and the idea of having one, especially one with Max's reputation for possessiveness, in his home, was far from appealing. Yet his desire for Rachel, his nascent affection, outweighed his aversion. Okay, if that's what it takes, Max can come. Rachel was relieved, interpreting his concession as acceptance, a sign that perhaps this relationship could indeed accommodate her unique, complicated dynamic. But the truth was more complex. Daniel was making a sacrifice, a compromise that spoke volumes about his willingness to try, but also hinted at the underlying tension that Max's presence would inevitably bring. Rachel's final thought, Max was her protector, her companion, and she wasn't ready to put anyone, even Daniel, above him, underscored the profound, unresolved challenge that Max still represented. The arrival of Rachel and Max at Daniel's apartment was fraught with unspoken tension. Daniel, with a nervous smile, opened the door, a silent apprehension hanging in the air. Max, trotting confidently behind Rachel, immediately began to sniff around, claiming the new territory. The initial hours were deceptively peaceful. Rachel and Daniel, seated on the couch, engaged in easy conversation, laughter filling the space, while Max lay quietly at Rachel's feet, seemingly content. This brief calm was a fragile truce, a temporary suspension of the underlying conflict. The storm, however, was brewing just beneath the surface, waiting for the opportune moment to erupt. That moment arrived with a simple human gesture of affection. As Daniel leaned in to kiss Rachel, a natural and expected intimacy in a burgeoning relationship, Max sprang into action. A loud bark, a fierce declaration, shattered the peace, startling both Rachel and Daniel. "Whoa, what was that about?" Daniel's racing heart, his pulled-back form spoke volumes about the shock and immediate discomfort he felt. Rachel, ever the apologist for Max, tried to placate him. "He's just protective. He'll get used to you." But Daniel wasn't convinced. Every subsequent attempt at intimacy was met with the same aggressive, territorial response. Fierce barking, baring of teeth, a clear, unmistakable warning. Daniel's attempts to laugh it off were hollow. The tension was palpable, and the dog's relentless antagonism made relaxation impossible. This wasn't merely a dog being protective. It was Max actively sabotaging any attempt at human intimacy, fiercely defending his perceived claim over Rachel. Over the next few days, the reality of the situation became starkly clear to Daniel. Rachel's attention, her care, her very being seemed to revolve around Max. Every time he tried to hold her hand, to cuddle, Max would physically intervene, barking or nudging his way between them. It was a constant, undeniable assertion of dominance, a possessive declaration that Rachel was his. Daniel, despite his initial patience and desire to make the relationship work, found his resolve wearing thin. This wasn't a three-way relationship. It was a two-person dynamic constantly interrupted and dictated by the third, non-human party. The frustration, the sense of constantly competing with an animal for his girlfriend's affection, was becoming unbearable. One night, the breaking point arrived. As they sat watching a movie, Daniel made another attempt to kiss Rachel. Again, Max reacted with a guttural growl and a furious bark, forcing Daniel to recoil. The accumulated frustration, the endless cycle of interruption and aggression, finally boiled over. "I can't do this, Rachel. Every time I try to get close to you, your dog loses it. I'm trying here, but Max doesn't like me." Rachel, caught between her deep-seated loyalty to Max and her burgeoning feelings for Daniel, felt torn. Her familiar refrain, "He's just not used to you yet. Give him time. He'll calm down," sounded hollow even to her own ears. Daniel's exasperated response, "It's been days. It's like Max doesn't want me anywhere near you. I can't keep competing with your dog for your attention," articulated the undeniable truth. He was no longer willing to tolerate the impossible dynamic. Rachel, looking down at Max, who sat protectively beside her, knew Daniel had a point, but the emotional grip Max had on her was still too strong. "I need Max," she said softly, a poignant admission of her continuing dependency. "He's been with me through everything." This wasn't just about companionship. It was about the security, the unique form of satisfaction Max provided, and the deep-seated fear of letting go of that perceived, irreplaceable bond. In the face of Daniel's ultimatum, Rachel, with her deeply ingrained patterns of attachment, found a way to make things work, at least on the surface. Daniel, perhaps out of a fading hope or a desire to avoid direct confrontation, tried to get along with Max. Max, in turn, began to ease up around him, a fragile truce born of reluctant acceptance. But beneath this superficial calm, a darker, more troubling dynamic continued to play out, a secret that Rachel kept hidden even from Daniel. The original story highlights this with chilling clarity. Each time Daniel left for work or had to go away, Rachel found herself turning to Max for comfort. This wasn't just comforting a pet. The subsequent description implies a continuation of their unhealthy intimacy. It had become a routine now. As soon as Daniel was out the door, she would sit on the couch with Max, stroking his fur, kissing him softly on the head, and whispering things to him she wouldn't dare say to anyone else. Max, indeed, was More than just a pet, he was her companion, her protector, and in some strange way he filled a part of her that no one else could. This clandestine continuation of her intimate bond with Max, even while attempting to build a relationship with Daniel, reveals the profound depth of Rachel's psychological entanglement. It speaks to a profound split in her emotional life, a desire for a normal human relationship coexisting with a secret, deeply problematic attachment that still provided her with a unique, illicit form of fulfillment. She knew it wasn't normal, knew she shouldn't feel this way, but the addiction, the habit, the deep emotional void Max filled was too powerful to resist. He had been her constant through everything, loneliness, heartbreak, and even the struggle to open up to Daniel. This secrecy, this double life, became a heavy burden, a ticking time bomb threatening to detonate her nascent attempts at a normal future. The inevitable confrontation arrived. Daniel, returning home from a long, frustrating day, was met once again by Max's incessant, aggressive barking. His patience, already stretched thin, finally snapped. "Enough!" Daniel shouted. "I can't take this anymore." Rachel's frantic attempts to calm Max were futile. Daniel, his face red with anger, turned to her, his words cutting like a knife. "You need to leave, Rachel. I'm done with you and that dog of yours." Rachel's pleas, her desperate assertions of love for Daniel, were met with scorn. "Protective?" Daniel scoffed. "He's out of control. And I don't even know what's going on behind closed doors between you two. It's like you care more about that dog than anything else." This accusation, sharp and brutal, cut to the heart of Rachel's secret. Daniel, though unaware of the full, disturbing truth, had instinctively grasped the essence of her twisted priorities. His suspicion, his perception of something deeply wrong and secretive, was entirely justified. Rachel's fervent denial, her tearful declaration of love, were insufficient to mend the chasm that had opened between them. Daniel, seeing the futility of competing with an animal for affection and sensing a deeper, darker secret he couldn't comprehend, made his final, irrevocable decision. "No, Rachel, I'm done. I can't live like this anymore with you and your stupid, overprotective dog. It's too much." With her heart shattered and Max by her side, Rachel walked out of Daniel's house. This eviction, this harsh rejection, wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was another painful consequence of her inability to set boundaries, to choose a healthy future over the destructive comfort of her past. It was a clear, unambiguous message from the world outside her self-created bubble. This path was unsustainable. Months passed. Rachel, having once again faced the harsh consequences of her unhealthy attachment, found herself yearning for a fresh start, a genuine connection. This desire for change, born from repeated failures and heartbreaks, led her to Robert. He was a new man, a new possibility. She fell deeply in love, a love that felt different, cleaner, imbued with a desire to leave her tumultuous past behind. The word change was paramount. She was tired of the destructive cycles, the isolation, the constant tension. She was determined to make this relationship work, to build a future unburdened by the shadows of Max. After a few months of dating, Robert proposed, and Rachel, overflowing with joy and a profound sense of hope, accepted. This was it, her chance at a normal life, a happy ending. In her excitement, she immediately shared the news with her best friend, Angela. But along with the good news, a profound need to unburden herself arose. The secret, the shame of her past with Max, had been a heavy weight, and now, on the cusp of a new life, she felt compelled to confess. She told Angela everything, detailing the too close, not normal relationship with Max. Angela's reaction was predictable: shock, surprise, disbelief. But she listened, a crucial act of friendship. Rachel, ashamed and desperate to move on, begged Angela not to tell anyone, to keep her secret buried. Angela, still processing the disturbing revelations, promised she wouldn't. She encouraged Rachel to deal with the situation fully, a wise counsel that Rachel, in her eagerness to escape the past, dismissed. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind, hoping that by burying it, it would simply disappear. This desire to outrun one's past, to pretend it never happened, is a common human failing, often leading to greater complications down the line. The delicate balance of their friendship, however, was about to be irrevocably shattered. As they walked down the street, Angela casually asked to see a picture of Robert. Rachel, glowing with pride, pulled out her phone and showed her future husband. The moment Angela saw the picture, her heart skipped a beat, a surge of shock and jealousy washing over her. Robert wasn't just any man. He was her long-standing crush, someone she had admired from afar for months. She had never mentioned him to Rachel, the unlikelihood of their paths crossing seemingly absolute. Now, seeing him as Rachel's fiancé, Angela was consumed by a potent mix of envy and disappointment. She managed to maintain a calm facade, forcing a smile and offering a bland compliment, but deep down, a dark seed of resentment began to sprout. This unforeseen revelation instantly transformed Angela from a trusted confidant into a formidable and deeply threatened rival. The promise of secrecy, the bond of friendship, would soon be tested and ultimately broken by the corrosive power of jealousy. From that day forward, Angela, consumed by a venomous cocktail of jealousy and resentment, began her insidious campaign to sabotage Rachel's relationship. Her methods were subtle at first, planting seeds of doubt in Rachel's mind, skillfully weaving narratives designed to erode trust. "I actually know Robert's ex-girlfriend," she claimed, a manipulative tactic to lend credibility to her fabricated stories. "She told me some things about him that don't sound good. You should be careful, Rachel." The vague, ominous nature of the accusations, he wasn't always honest with her, he hurt her, was designed to be difficult to refute, to linger in Rachel's mind, a quiet poison. Rachel, shocked and confused, struggled to reconcile this image with the kind, loving man she knew. Angela, feigning concern, insisted she was just looking out for you. A classic maneuver of manipulative behavior. She wasn't suggesting an immediate breakup, but rather a subtle, persistent erosion of confidence. Despite Angela's persistent warnings, Rachel, perhaps learning from her past mistakes, chose to trust Robert. She knew, deep in her heart, that he was nothing like Angela described. In a twist of irony, Angela's relentless negativity only strengthened Rachel's resolve. The more Angela pushed, the more Rachel felt sure of her decision. This unexpected outcome only fueled Angela's anger and frustration. She felt unheard, disregarded, and deeply hurt by the knowledge that the man she yearned for was about to marry her best friend. The tension between them, though unspoken, began to build, a palpable force threatening to fracture their friendship. Rachel, still naive to the depths of Angela's jealousy, attributed her friend's behavior to simple worry, failing to grasp the true, venomous motives simmering beneath the surface. In a cruel twist of fate, an old ghost from Rachel's past resurfaced to complicate her present. One afternoon, Robert came to visit, and as he stepped inside, Max, still living with Rachel despite her engagement, began barking loudly, aggressively, just as he had with Daniel. Robert, unlike Daniel, was terrified of dogs. Max's aggressive display, a clear echo of the past, immediately sent a wave of panic through him. Without a word, visibly shaken, Robert quickly backed out of the house and hurried away, too afraid to stay. This was the final straw for Rachel. Max, the enduring symbol of her past mistakes and unhealthy attachments, had once again driven away the man she loved, the man she wanted to build a future with. The pattern was undeniable, the consequences too dire to ignore. Max was not just an inconvenience. He was an insurmountable barrier to her happiness, her chance at a normal, healthy life. That evening, Rachel made a decision that, while agonizing, was finally rooted in a clear-eyed assessment of her future. She took Max to her neighbors, a couple who were relocating to another city and had agreed to take him in. This wasn't a temporary separation. It was a permanent farewell. As she handed Max over, the dog whimpered and cried, his sad eyes following her as she turned away. The scene was heartbreaking, a poignant farewell to a creature who, despite his destructive role, had been her constant companion for so long. But Rachel didn't look back. She was done with the chaos, the isolation, the constant interference Max brought into her life. She had chosen love, genuine human love, and she was ready to leave the past behind. As she walked home, a strange mix of sadness and profound relief washed over her. It wasn't easy, but she knew, deep in her heart, that it was the right choice. She was finally choosing herself, choosing a future unburdened by the shadows of her past. Angela's attempts at manipulation, her subtle poisoning of Rachel's trust, had failed. The engagement to Robert was moving forward, and this desperate reality fueled Angela's anger and frustration to a dangerous, new level. In a fit of desperation, she escalated her tactics, abandoning subtlety for outright blackmail. She threatened to expose Rachel's past with Max, demanding a large sum of money each month to keep her silence. Rachel, caught off guard, tried to explain her financial limitations, but Angela, privy to Robert's generosity, insisted Rachel could afford it. The threat was clear and terrifying. Pay up, or your secrets will be exposed, and your future with Robert shattered. Rachel, trapped and terrified, had no choice but to agree. Each month, Rachel paid Angela, hoping to buy her silence, hoping to keep her past buried. But Angela's demands only grew, insatiable and relentless. Rachel found herself drowning under the weight of the blackmail, torn between her upcoming wedding and the constant fear of exposure. The closer the wedding approached, the more intense the pressure became. The joy, the excitement she had once felt, slowly faded, replaced by anxiety, fear, and a suffocating sense of dread. She knew she couldn't keep paying Angela forever, but she felt powerless, caught in a trap of her own making. Angela held too much power, too much leverage, and the threats never ceased. Rachel was living a nightmare, unable to focus, constantly looking over her shoulder, her dream wedding overshadowed by a terrifying secret and a manipulative blackmailer. The burden was simply too much to bear. The breaking point arrived after a sleepless night of agonizing contemplation. Rachel knew she couldn't go on living like this, especially with her wedding day looming. The constant fear, the corrosive effect of Angela's blackmail was destroying her from the inside out. With a surge of desperate courage, she made the momentous decision to tell Robert the truth. This was not merely an act of confession, it was an act of profound vulnerability, a leap of faith, a desperate hope that genuine love could withstand the weight of her darkest secrets. The next day, with her heart pounding in her chest, Rachel sat Robert down. She confessed everything: her strange, unhealthy attachment to Max, the years of isolation, Angela's relentless blackmail, and the suffocating fear that had consumed her. She expected shock, anger, perhaps even immediate rejection. But Robert, in a moment of extraordinary grace and understanding, simply listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't recoil. When Rachel finished, a heavy silence filled the room. She couldn't meet his eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable condemnation. Finally, Robert reached out, gently took her hand and lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. He admitted his own imperfections, his own regrets, revealing a shared humanity in their vulnerability. Everyone makes mistakes, he told her, but what mattered was that they could move forward together without letting the past control them. He forgave her, assuring her that her past with Max did not change how he felt about her. He loved her for who she was now, and he wasn't going to let her mistakes or Angela's vindictive threats ruin their future. Rachel was overwhelmed with relief, a profound sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. She had anticipated the worst, a reenactment of past rejections, but instead, Robert had offered kindness, understanding, and unconditional acceptance. For the first time in months, she felt truly free. Free from guilt, free from Angela's control, and ready to embrace a new chapter, a new life built on honesty, trust, and genuine love. This moment of confession and forgiveness was not just a turning point in her relationship with Robert. It was a profound act of self-acceptance, a crucial step in her journey towards healing and self-worth. A few days after her confession, the phone rang. It was Angela demanding her monthly payment, oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in Rachel's life. But this time, Rachel was different. Empowered by Robert's acceptance, fortified by a newfound sense of freedom and confidence, there was no fear in her voice. She calmly, decisively, told Angela to go to hell. Angela, stunned by the unexpected defiance, was momentarily silenced. Then, enraged, she lashed out, reiterating her threats to expose Rachel's past, desperate to regain control. But Rachel didn't flinch. In a fit of desperation, Angela decided to take her threats directly to Robert, convinced she could ruin Rachel's life once and for all. But Angela's plan spectacularly backfired. With a smug, self-satisfied tone, she began recounting all the sordid details, gleefully describing Rachel's strange involvement with Max and her months of blackmail. She expected horror, disgust, a violent rejection of Rachel. Instead, Robert's voice, calm and steady, delivered the crushing blow. "I already know everything, Angela. Rachel told me everything herself, and I forgave her. So whatever you're trying to do, it won't work." A long, suffocating silence stretched across the line. Angela couldn't believe it. All her scheming, all her manipulation, all her venomous efforts had utterly collapsed. Robert didn't care. He had chosen to stand by Rachel, and there was absolutely nothing Angela could do to change that. For the first time, Angela felt a profound sense of shame, a crushing realization of the futility and cruelty of her actions. Jealousy and bitterness had consumed her, and now it had all come crashing down, leaving her with nothing but humiliation and the irreparable loss of a friendship. Defeated, she hung up the phone, knowing that her influence, her power, and her friendship with Rachel were irrevocably over. A few days later, Rachel and Robert's wedding day finally arrived. The weather was perfect, the sun shining brightly, mirroring the radiant joy that emanated from Rachel. A profound weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She walked down the aisle, her heart full, her spirit free, knowing she had navigated the darkest chapters of her life and emerged stronger, with Robert by her side. The ceremony was a beautiful celebration of love, trust, and resilience, a testament to the power of honesty and forgiveness. Family and friends gathered, oblivious to the hidden battles Rachel had fought and won. But none of that mattered anymore. Rachel had found true happiness, a genuine connection built on a foundation of honesty and mutual acceptance. As she and Robert exchanged vows, Rachel couldn't help but smile, a quiet triumph shining in her eyes. She had chosen love over fear, vulnerability over secrecy, and it had led her to this moment of profound peace and joy. With the past firmly behind her and a bright, hopeful future stretching ahead, Rachel was ready to begin her new life as Robert's wife. Their vows were sealed with a kiss, surrounded by applause and cheers, marking not just the beginning of a marriage, but the start of a life filled with authentic hope, unwavering trust, and enduring love. Rachel's dramatic journey from the depths of profound loneliness and an unconventional, isolating attachment to a place of genuine connection and self-acceptance offers a poignant and multifaceted lesson. At its core, the story speaks to the critical importance of setting clear, healthy boundaries in all relationships, whether they are with people or, as in Rachel's unique and troubling case, with pets. It underscores that while companionship is a fundamental human need, the desperate pursuit of it can lead us down paths that are not only unhealthy, but ethically perilous. The initial comfort derived from an attachment, however intense, can quickly become a cage if it isolates us from the world, prevents personal growth, or distorts our capacity for healthy human connection. We must consistently evaluate if our relationships are truly uplifting us, or if they are subtly, insidiously diminishing our lives and our potential. Furthermore, Rachel's story is a powerful testament to the destructive power of secrets and the liberating force of honesty. The burden of her hidden attachment, amplified by Angela's blackmail, nearly shattered her future. The constant fear of exposure, the psychological toll of living a lie, corroded her peace and joy. It illustrates how secrets, particularly those born of shame or unconventional choices, can become anchors, holding us back from true happiness and authentic connection. Her eventual decision to confess everything to Robert, despite the immense fear and risk, was not just an act of courage, but a profound act of self-love. It was the moment she chose to shed the weight of her past, to allow vulnerability to pave the way for genuine intimacy and acceptance. The narrative also profoundly explores the theme of forgiveness. Robert's capacity to forgive Rachel, to look beyond her past mistakes and see her present self, is a crucial element of her redemption. It highlights that true love and partnership are often forged not in the absence of flaws, but in the acceptance and understanding of them. More importantly, Rachel's journey necessitates self-forgiveness. It's easy to judge Rachel's actions from an external perspective, but her story is a complex tapestry of loneliness, desperation, and misguided attempts to find love and satisfaction. To truly move forward, she had to forgive herself for the choices she made, born from a place of profound emotional need. This self-compassion is often the most difficult, yet most vital step in healing from past errors. Finally, Rachel's story serves as a cautionary tale about the insidious nature of possessiveness, whether it manifests in an animal's behavior or a human's. Max's escalating territoriality, while seemingly born of loyalty, ultimately drove away every potential human connection in Rachel's life, isolating her further. This possessiveness, mirrored in Rachel's own emotional dependency, illustrates how control, even when framed as protection, can suffocate growth and destroy relationships. It reminds us that genuine connection thrives on freedom, trust, and mutual respect, not on forced exclusivity or the systematic elimination of all perceived rivals. Ultimately, Rachel's dramatic tale offers a clear, resonant takeaway. Don't let your actions lead you down a path that you instinctively know isn't right. It's imperative to cultivate self-awareness, to listen to the whispers of our conscience and the warnings from those who care about us. Setting healthy boundaries is not just about protecting others. It's about safeguarding our own well-being and paving the way for truly fulfilling, respectful, and joyful relationships. And when mistakes are made, as they inevitably will be in the complex tapestry of human life, the only viable path forward is to confront them with courage, to seek forgiveness not just from others, but most profoundly from ourselves. It is through this arduous process of self-reflection, honesty, and acceptance that we can truly heal, grow, and build a future worthy of our deepest hopes and aspirations.